Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much, the National Film and Video Censors Board of Nigeria, for bringing this workshop to this space. In film production, we like to look at the state as an enclosure in which the film scene is shot. And it consists of the scenery and the props. So everything in the mise-en-scene, everything that the camera focuses on that is ultimately delivered in the final product is the set. But there's something artistic about the set. It's artificially constructed artistic environment. That's the first definition. We use it for theater production, for film production, for television production. Peculiar nuances that define each of the sets, but we'll talk more about film sets today. Any place that has been modified to give feel and mark is a set, particularly for the production we're talking about, film production. So these definitions look very simple, but it's not that simple. I really had to start this so that I set your mind specifically on what we want to discuss. The production of film is very complex, so the definition may be simplified, but as we delve into film production design, we will understand the complexity arising from the aesthetic angle, but most importantly, the functional angle, because it has to come in space for movement. And in that space, it's not just the blank space, even the space, the environment has to tell the story. It has to suggest the place and time of the action. It also helps to create the mood. And there are certain design elements that are brought into the set to help to set the mood and the atmosphere for the action. Similarly, such elements also help to detect the style, to specify the style and the tone of the film production. And there are some things that you introduce the film set design. It could be three-dimensional, the three-dimensional space or the two-dimensional space to help you reinforce the theme of production. So it says form follows function. The form that you want to create, or rather the function you want to achieve, will determine the forms. In this case, I extend it to materials that you want to create the form for. What you want to do will determine the materials you want to get to execute them. Two very clear materials are very popular when it comes to creating the form work: wood and metal. Frequently we use wood, but recently I've discovered that metal, because of the possibilities that metal offer, there are durable, there are transferable, you can get a lot more irregular forms using metals. Want to do something that is not popular, create something that is new, create kind of abstract form. It's easier to work with metal because it's more amenable. Ideas that become, no matter how complicated, you can achieve that with metal. So metal and wood, each of them has an advantage. Then we also understand that the materials that we need for finishing, it is the finishing that will bring out the character of the production space. And the finishing is part of what is documented in the script. You could have basic form work, obeying certain forms, obeying certain shapes, but the finishing of, say, a block can help to define whether that block is for a table, for a side suite, or for a bench. So it's the finishing and the trimmings, the props that accompany the basic scene elements is what will eventually define what it is meant for. And the materials for finishing, they are very plenty. That sometimes the designer calls for materials that will help him to achieve a given effect. If you want something that will be reflected, so that we begin to shoot, to use the reflected light and not the direct light from the lighting source, you can order from certain materials that can give you that soft reflection. If you want the kind of material that is absorbent, also absorb light. If you want the kind of material that will help you to control the soundscape, all these materials are special materials that you can choose and use in finishing your set. Next slide. The production team is large. Let's not go into the details here, but we'll particularize some, we'll pick some of the production team members. Next slide. We begin with the carpenter. The carpenter is a very vital member of the production team when it comes to set building. He creates the product, and he has to be very proficient in woodwork. And then for him to work with, because he may not be the central person that has conceived the design, the production designer. So the production designer has to now create or prepare the drawings which will guide the carpenter. So the carpenter should be able to interpret production drawing. Then there's something about working on a film set. Quite often we need to alter certain things, maybe to allow the equipment to move around. Sometimes we need to alter certain things to allow the interaction between the performer and the space. And when that becomes necessary, the carpenter is called to duty. So he has to be very swift, he has to adept, considering the fact that sometimes we need to alter certain things that were done earlier on before beginning the shoot. Next slide. Apart from the carpenter, we also need, the carpenter works with a number of tools. Some of these tools are conversant, and you must also acquire technical proficiency that will enable you to use these tools without wounding yourself or destroying the materials available. There are power tools. Next slide. Next slide will show you some manual tools, some of which will not undermine. How can you work without tape? How can you work without glue? How can you work without hammer? These are basic things that must be in the set designer's kitty, and particularly used by the carpenter and other members of the production team. Imagine yourself as one of them, picking a role, picking one of the specialties and seeing how you can work towards becoming one, because the film industry is growing and the dimensions are not yet exhausted. Have you thought of becoming a scene painter? You are responsible for painting the sets and all the accompanying elements of the sets. You work with the set designer, and the character of your painting might be decorative, it might be transformative. By that I mean, there are sometimes you pick up a surface and you change the quality of that surface. You change the character of that surface, not just to beautify it, because that's what the first function of painting does, decoration. But when you have to do something that maybe you're trying to achieve age, you pick up a piece of wood and you want to paint that piece of wood to reflect age. This thing has been around for some time. You could be painting a wall, but it's not just flat painting. You want to show that it's the wall of a house that people live in. And so there are splashes on the wall, for instance. So you build in the splash. You kind of do some kind of patination. Painting could be protective, because some of the materials that you use on set must be protected in case you need to reuse them. Some of them are stopped away, and then if you need to pull, you can pull and use them. And then the choices of paints could be matte, could be gloss. Of course, everything that we see in the film environment, in the acting environment, has a character, surface quality. Quite often it's painted. But sometimes they may not be painted, they may just be polished. All these things must get the attention of the scene painting. Next slide. There are also set decorators. I spoke about them when I talked about the carpenters. The carpenters produce the form work. But it's the set decorators that will ultimately trace and define the environment to align with the prescriptions on the scripts. Next slide. The props team, usually led by the props master, is an integral part of the setting. And we've said it before that properties are part of the set. And in fact, they help define the environment. And I'll show you pictures of how properties were able to transform an entire acting environment. Sometimes during the shoot, the props master is in charge of laying out various properties, positioning them, and then he organizes, retrieve them, and sometimes we alter, then reset, All these things are in the paper, of course, master expert. There are some people that may not be set designers, but they work with set designers. When you're producing your set, if the electrician comes around, it's for the purpose. He needs to understand where to read his lights. He needs to understand where to pass his cables without intruding on the final outlook. If you're working with parts, for instance, there are some areas of parts that will be so soft that it may not be able to take the reading. So he tells you where to enforce so that you'll be able to read his equipment. Similarly, we work with sound technicians, and since they are concerned with the general, the overall, next slide, the overall soundscape, they try to also understand where to read the sound equipment, where amplification is needed, and so forth. The gaffer is essentially a lighting technician, and he works with the camera crew. And what he does specifically is to ensure that as they're moving the equipment across the set that has been prepared, everything works according to plan. Some costumes can be restricted. So if you're expected to take like 6 inches up on a step unit, and you end up being 8 or 10 inches, you have to know the implications of that riser on the costume that has been used on a given by a given actor. So costume designers will come in to also offer ideas. Sound designer, I mentioned. All these people, on reading the script, understand the script, interpret the script, sometimes differently. So it's essential for all the design collaborators to come together and harmonize their ideas, working with the director, of course, so that at the end of it, everybody will be singing according to tune. Next. But why build a film set when you can move into an actual location and also shoot? You know that it's common in Nigerian movies that they move into somebody's house and they do a scene, they move onto the field, they move onto the park and so forth. So why do we bother about building sets? There are times in certain productions that you need to establish control within the production environment. You want to avoid crowding, you want to ensure concentration, you want to avoid loitering. Sometimes even the performers may get distracted. If you are on set, if you are in a group and you are expected to concentrate and deliver your role, you will see your friend and you want to show that you are part of this team that is working on this wonderful production. That could be a distraction. And so some people prefer to control the environment by restricting everything within the space. And that helps you to manage that. That helps you to also manage the money that has been given for a given production, approved for a given production. Sometimes some locations may not exist and you just want to create. You know that scriptwriters are becoming very crazy in foods. And if they bring environments that you cannot scout and find, what do? You have to manufacture that environment. And sometimes you may even want to be a bit experimental. You have a new technique. You have some technical ideas when you want to play with lights, you want to re-engineer the soundscape, and then introduce special effects. These things may not be available in existing sets, so you have to create something. Next slide. Film production is executed in stages. But what I have noticed working over the years is that these things are done on paper, but not everybody follows these situations. Some designers are too large to follow, feel too large to follow the stipulated procedures. Some of them cut on and say their experience. But for the sake of documentation and for referencing, there are times, if I say that in shooting a film, sometimes you have to knock down a part of the set, allowing for a particular camera angle to come to play, to feature a particular direction properly, and you have to reset. You are guided by the drawing. So you are expected to produce visual guides. So you cannot cut corners. If you want to become a production designer, there are basic things you must do. If If you cut corners, then we'll end up having replicated ideas, reproduced ideas, and then they soon become boring and expire on the job. Next slide. It begins with reading the script. This is the first activity when it comes to production design. And I've said that the script is the Bible of production. If you read the script, it's been said that the first reading makes you conversant with the content, the second reading makes you conversant with the intent, and the third reading, you are reading to distill the technical elements, the technical issues. And then as you are reading, you are also getting a feel of the production. You know the energy behind the script. Every script comes with a kind of energy. It comes with a kind of drive. The script writer, the narrator, may offer a certain energy that you must key into to be able to design. And the elements of design, your choice of color, your linear patterns, your forms must help to redefine that energy in the production. So it's essential that you read that. So there are specific requirements in scenery, furnishing, props. I've said that before. And you also get to know the time, the location, season. So it's essential that you read the script and understand and own the script before you begin to design for any production. Next slide. After reading the script will go into sketches. All this while you are reading the script, ideas are building up in your mind. So camera helps you to narrow in, and so we depend on camera deception to achieve so many things when we are designing and designing things. And that helps us to manage the cost. In this other picture to the right, you'll imagine that these are paintings on the wall or pictures on the wall. It's not true. This is actually a cardboard wall. These are cardboard walls. And then we put another cardboard, black cardboard on the side. So you begin to imagine that it's a front painting. But the camera helps you to mask that. It does not expose you. So you rely on camera deception. Take it to the next slide. Again, you imagine that maybe these are constructed shelves on the wall. It's not, they're masking tapes. It's actually masking tape on flat walls. This is the Niger Christmas set again in Lagos. But the camera helps to deceive the eye. Next slide. This is another camera deception. It's supposed to be a floor carpet, and we couldn't afford one. So we used dry brush roller to roll on the plan, the surface. But when it's finally edited, you think that it's a very expensive raw carpet that can be used. But that was another leverage on what I call camera deception. Next slide. And that there are so many things that we should not express when it comes to film production, from nudity to the last paper went in detail on the things that are censored. And that actually this challenge I have noticed starts from the script. If the script calls for it, what do you do? But we have the central body, we are part of the team, we are partners, so we have to be very careful what we express. The choice of items that we use for set and props, the total visual expression and violate. Sometimes these things communicate non-verbal. You can bring an image and put, and you do not know that you are violating somebody's religious sensibilities. You can bring a kind of dress, and somebody's putting it on, you do not know how many people you are. So we should know that even the things that we use in the scenery during production, it communicates to audiences. And as the final word I'm saying, the designer is a partner in content development. Partner in this process, you are expected to work in collaboration, making vital suggestions where you think you are going to derail, where you think some things may become objectionable when you express them on stage. You may want to suggest so that we preserve this our art for posterity. Thank you very much.